Let me also first start by thanking Manoj and IGF for having me here and for us to be able to have a conversation like this. I totally sort of stand by what I wrote, that cupcakes will not bring empowerment.
Definitely.
For empowerment, you need to be acknowledged for what you bring to the table, which women often don't. You need freedom of choice and freedom to express your opinion. You need financial independence. You need to be in control of your life. And I think being rewarded and being appreciated for what you contribute to this world. Not just in terms of words, but I think in our world increasingly financially as well, is very, very important. I think the challenges for women are near universal, and they are industry agnostic. Though for journalists, the time that we spend doing our work the hours are longer. It's more demanding physically and mentally, and you find yourself in situations which are not always friendly. So yes, it can seem more daunting from the outside, but I think any woman who manages both home and work feels those pressures. Having said that, in newsrooms still are a man's world. I know there are a lot of women presenters, but the people who are making the calls are more men than women. And I think I was lucky to have had some good mentors and bosses along the way. But I wouldn't say that it's easy for anyone, for people in my team. And whatever I learned in my 2 odd decades, I make sure that the challenges I face are not the same ones that my team faces. I'm sure they have their own set of things to worry about. But I think what we need is more women leaders to be able to appreciate what women in the workforce anywhere go through. This is not so much about the networks, it's about the industry that we operate in, I think. And this was famously said by someone else. I love to borrow the quote that women are judged on their performance and men are judged on their potential. So you always have to prove both to your bosses and to your teams that you're deserving of the seat that you have. And it's that much harder for any woman leader anywhere. So no, it's not easy, and sometimes you have to go against your basic nature and push for your case. because I think a lot of women still believe that someone somewhere will recognize how talented they are and reward them, and it doesn't happen. And over the past few years, when I became a manager, when I started hiring people, I saw that and I'm not saying it's a bad quality, but men were very forthright in asking for what they think they deserved and negotiating better for their salaries and for their resignations. Women were more, they did not want to upset anyone. And I think that's how a lot of girls are raised. We need to change that, and we need to tell them that it's okay to ask for what you think.
I've heard that in so many.
I always say that journalism chose me. I was studying to do something else. I wanted to be a designer, but I somehow found myself writing for a local newspaper. I always say that journalism chose me, and one thing led to the other, and then I was in a bigger newsroom. It was quite fascinating, so I stayed and did what I was doing. But I think I chose journalism after I took a break, and I did because I don't know how much of Indian news or television news you guys have consumed, but it became a very crowded place, and the kind of storytelling that I wanted to do was not what I was doing, or so I thought. So I did take a break, but when I came back, I knew that I wanted to tell news stories, like stories that are palatable and accessible to people of a wide range. I also wanted to tell the India story. We are a country of 140 crore people. We have 400 news channels in India. But we did not have a global voice, as it were. So we wanted to tell our own story to the world and not depend on someone else to do that. And in my own small way, sort of, that's what I tried to do. We still have a long way to go, but I guess we've made a start.
You've done incredible.
The big interviews, one of them I did in Dubai, that was Pervez Musharraf. He was the former president of Pakistan and the army chief. I think that was quite an interesting interview. I wouldn't say one story is more exciting than the other, because we tell the stories that excite us anyway. But of late, so last month I was in Israel just after the conflict began. The year before, I was in Ukraine. See what was happening, and when you're there on the ground and you talk to people, then you get a perspective that you do not get while you're sitting in your studio. And you realize that it's so easy for us to sit every night and say, this is the death toll, and this is what has happened, and these are the trends. But when you've been there, then you see how it touches lives, and it can be very moving, and it shapes you as an individual. You know, all of those things. you see a trend that is building. I think Me Too was one such movement of sorts that was supported a lot by the media. We did not have any ground reports, as it were. But there was, or the big anti-corruption movement that we had in India. You know, when you're part of those events, then you see history shaping in front of your very eyes, and you feel that there has to be a bigger purpose to what you're doing than just telling the news. I mean, you're actually shaping your story and that of your country or your people. So I think 62 you said?
62%, yeah.
I thought 80% of Indian women have
Oh,
bank
wow,
accounts,
okay.
but it's not as much as men, obviously, and it's better than the global average. For India. I think in India, or I don't know about other societies, but women have a way of saving which is not documented in formal structures. So we are the biggest consumers of gold, and that is a form of security for women, and they, you know, stash away some money. But that money is just there. It's not investment. It's just a saving for a rainy day, and it's their understanding of security. I think even for women who have jobs and who are earning their own money are not managing it. I have a friend who runs a podcast on financial advice, and she told me that a lot of middle-aged women in India are now being struck with 2 Ds, that is debt and divorce. And then when they're on their own, with a big debt, they do not know, they've never managed their finances. And so she's telling them to take charge of, and it can't be so difficult. And I think financial literacy is a life skill that should be taught in schools to everyone, but especially to women, because we need to know what we're doing with what we have. So I think financial independence is very important, and we need to I guess it's not on anyone's priority list, not that I know of. So I think it would help to have more women leaders because they can inspire others. I think in schools and colleges, women tend to do better academically, at least in India they do, than boys. But then somewhere along the way they drop out of the workforce because their career cycle and their biological cycles clash. And a lot of them choose their family or whatever it is that they're doing, and that's their choice. But I'm saying that we don't have a pipeline of leaders to draw from then after a certain point. So we need that. We also need networks that support women. to pick a career of their choice. There are all boys clubs. There aren't such clubs or groups for women that enable them to make the choices that they want and grow. They typically do not get the kind of investment. There was a very interesting study that was done, I don't know, I think it was in the US, where the same investment pitch was made in a man's voice and the same one was made in a woman's voice, and the one with the man's voice got more takers. So I think these are inbuilt biases. It won't change overnight, and what we need to do then is to co-opt men and women in this journey of transformation, because we cannot change biology, but we can certainly transform our society and what it expects of us.
That's all.
Education policy, I'm not sure I'm the best person to talk about how it should change. Like I said, financial literacy should be introduced, but I was part of some conversations around G20 on women empowerment, and we had women leaders from various countries, all G20 members, in India a couple of months back. And ministers. And one of the interesting things that came out was STEM education, that more girls need to be encouraged to take up science, technology, engineering, and math, because the job market is going to change and it'll be more technology oriented. But I don't know if it's because of biases, I don't know if it's because women think or girls think that they will do better in humanities, which is okay if that's what they want to study. But there has to be an active intervention to encourage girls to pick up those subjects. STEM education is the way forward for them to be able to become more eligible for the kind of jobs that we'll have in the near future.
The future of jobs.
And some of this data is very, very disheartening, like the gender pay gap, for instance. You know, the best agencies in the world say that it's going to take 136 years or 140 years to close that gap, which tells us how slow our progress is. A couple of years back, I remember there was a study that came out that said that women who do unpaid work or work at home, if that were to be quantified and paid for, it would be some $11 trillion. And if those women were to make a country, they would have the third highest GDP in the world. So they are contributing, and if you were to add it to the contribution that is converted into money, then women would be contributing much higher to the global GDP. So I think that there needs to be more awareness to what women are are bringing to society, and they need to be compensated for that. I wished I'd known before getting into this field.
How would you have navigated it better, do you think?
Make the best case for yourself. You have to market yourself. No one else is going to do that for you, I think that. But my first advice to anybody would be to read and to educate yourself, because that's what is going to stand you in good stead, no matter what you do. And it's very important. Because especially as journalists, we struggle with timelines. We are always faced with a stiff deadline, and we have to deliver. So it helps if you have some basic understanding of a subject, and you can't do it overnight. It's a process that takes years, and there is no shortcut to it. So you have to do it, and it can be. It is not. It can be. I mean, you ask the junior most reporters on the field. They're sent on a. They're usually given education or crime. That's where you start as reporters. And crime reporting can be tough because you're thrown into all sorts of situations. You see all kinds of scenes which can be blood-curdling. And initially, some of those stories stay with you for very long. Slowly, you become more cynical and you learn to process it, and you know that you don't have to become very emotionally attached. The first time I went into refugee's house, it stayed with me for months, and then I had to learn to tell myself that I'm not part of that story. I can only tell the story, but I do not have to go and find a school for those kids.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm here for. So I think it takes time to become more rational about the subjects that you're dealing with, and they're not easy. I mean, you learn every day. And sometimes it's upsetting because when you're talking about stories like hunger, they're not as exciting as war. So you see people switching off mentally or physically. And that's not nice because you're telling about the hardships that a huge section of our population is going through. So I think the challenge is to make it more interesting and palatable and exciting. All stories are not like that, but that's what we do. For me, I think it's my mother. She got married at a very early age. She gave herself an education. She was studying and taking a formal degree till I was in high school. And she was doing it with everything else. And she was a teacher, she was raising us, and she was studying herself. And she's taught us to be true to our values and just take a shot and see where it takes you. So I think it takes It takes a lot of grit. And I see, and her story is not unique, but that's I think, what inspires me, and I hope that I can leave that behind for my own daughter. So I think she's always inspired me that way, and she's had a very positive approach to life, which is hard to emulate.
Really nice.